guys, and welcome back to Claire's Clues. On today's video, I'd like to talk to you about the book Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker. Now, if we look back in history at all the greats, we'll be looking at people such as Mozart, Da Vinci, and even Abraham Lincoln. But if you want a more modern day version of the greats, then you'll be looking towards people such as Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Bill Gates. Now, the one thing that they all have in common is that they are self-managed. So what this essentially means is that because each one of us is different, we really need to understand ourselves and live our lives according to our strengths and not somebody else's. So, this is the only way that we can really bring value into the world and have the best chance of success in our own personal lives. Now, the reason for this, according to Drucker, is because we can't build our strengths on our weaknesses, only on the things that we're already a little bit above average on. Or in, I should say, sorry. Now, the problem with that most of us face is that the majority of us never really find out what our unique talents or gifts are. And the reason for this is because of our environment. It usually tries to point out our weaknesses, like when we're in school, and we spend a lot of time in classes that we're not necessarily talented in or good at. And what we find is that we end up studying for tests, for exams, for these classes, for these subjects, when we could be putting in that time and effort into things that we're already good at and perfecting what we already know are our talents. So another problem a lot of us struggle with is that we are living to a certain standard or to social standards or stereotypes, which in reality could be hindering us from discovering our hidden strengths or ones that we could potentially have. Now, in order to get to really know ourselves, Drucker says that we need to do this one thing. And he says it's called feedback analysis. So what you'll need to do is set a goal for a period between 9 and 12 months. And at the end of that time, you'll need to compare your results to your expectations, which means you'll need to have written down your expectations or take a note of them somewhere where you won't lose them. Because in 9 to 12 months' time, you want to sit down and evaluate what it is that, what did you aim for and what did you get? So what this does is it shows you how good you are already in a particular area and what you would have to do to become great at it, and if there is a chance for you to become a master at it. So with this method, you'll discover your strengths and weaknesses in a matter of about 2 to 3 years, which will serve you well and it'll become a great return on investment over the rest of your life. So with that being said though, that's not the only way to know our talents or to get to know our talents. So we also need to learn how to perform and learn in the most effective way. So for example, some people learn by reading, others learn by visual cues such as pictures, graphs, and drawn examples, while other people do better with verbal communication or direction. Or sometimes a combination of all three, or maybe just two. It really just depends on you as a person and what best suits your learning abilities. So, to quote Drucker really quickly, he says, "Do not try and change yourself, you are unlikely to succeed." Instead, he says, "Work hard to improve the way you actually perform." So after identifying strengths, Drucker says to tie them into values instead of against them, like a lot of people make the mistake of doing. So pursue what your strengths are and allow yourself to fulfill your personal values and morals. Alright guys, so I'll quickly do a recap of all of this just to make sure that you haven't missed anything, and if you have, we can go back over it. So in the beginning, we're talking about how if you look back in history, you've got greats like Mozart, Da Vinci, and Abraham Lincoln. Or if you want to turn to a more modern day version of the greats, you're looking towards people such as Elon Musk, Bill Gates, and Jeff Bezos. Now, the one thing that these guys have, the one thing that they all have in common is the fact that they are self-managed. So what this essentially means is that because they're all different, or because each one of us is different, we need to really understand ourselves and live our lives according to our strengths and not someone else's. So what we can find sometimes is that you might find someone in the same field as you, but they've been there, 2, 3, maybe 5, 10 years longer than you have. So they know things that you might not. But because they've set a high standard for themselves because of the knowledge that they have, you feel the need, or might want to feel the need, to live up to that standard. When in reality, you might have only been there for 6 or 12 months. So it's not realistic at all for you to live up to their standard or their expectations. So that's, you know, they have their set of strengths and you have yours. And you don't want to go imposing on yourself strengths that you're not quite familiar with yet, or something that you're not sure of. So only do what you know you can. And if you're unsure, there's always chance to learn, but don't necessarily go throwing yourself in the deep end. So it goes on to say that this is the only way that we can bring the most value possible into the world and have the best chances of success in our own personal lives. So the reason for this, according to Drucker, he says, is because we can't build our strengths on our weaknesses, only on the things that we're already at least a little bit above average on or in. Now, the problem that most of us face, though, is that the majority of us never really find out our unique talent or our gift. Or maybe you have multiple. The reason for this is because our environment. It usually tries to point out our weaknesses versus our strengths. So the example that I gave before was being in school. So when you're in school, you're looking at things like, say you're not very good at maths, but you get thrown in there and you don't really have a choice. You've got to do the maths. And what you find is you end up taking tests and exams for this, and you know, you might fail, you might get an average score, whatever it might be, but you'll find that it's not your strength. It's not something that you're talented in, and you'd rather, you know, do something else. So instead of, instead of taking all those tests and exams and putting all your time and effort into maths, really, something that you might not be good at, you could be really working on yourself and working on your talents that you either know you already have or something that you want to pursue or perfect, Now, another problem a lot of us tend to struggle with is living up to societal standards or stereotypes, which in reality can find us to be, on the back foot. We can be hindered by the fact that we're living up to other people's standards or expectations. Which really doesn't enable us to find our talents or our gifts in any way. So he goes on to say that in order to really get to know ourselves, we have to do something called a feedback analysis. So what you want to do is you want to grab a pen and paper, maybe you want to grab your phone, and you want to set a goal for around 9 to 12 months from now. So at the end of it, what you'll want to do is compare your results to your expectations. What do you expect to get out of those 9 to 12 months? Or by the end of it, what do you want to happen? So what you have to do is actually write down your expectations and take note of them somewhere. Like I said, don't lose them because you're going to want to go back over them. So what this does is it shows you how good you are already in a particular area or in a field. And what you would do is find out if you could become great in other areas or if there's a chance for you to master anything in any way. Now, with this method, you can discover your strengths strengths and weaknesses in about 2 to 3 years, which will serve you well in the long run, and it becomes a great return in investment over the rest of your life. Now, with that being said, though, that's not the only way to get to know your talents. And moving on, he also says that we also need to learn how we perform and learn in the most effective ways. So, for example, like I said before, some people learn by reading, others learn by visual cues such as graphs, pictures, drawn examples, and other people are better with verbal communication or direction, or a combination of all three, or maybe, you're one or two of them. Doesn't really matter too much because it will suit you and you'll know what's best for you. And moving on, just to quote Drucker really quickly, he says, "Don't try and change yourself. You are unlikely to succeed. Instead," he says, "to work hard to improve the way you actually perform." And last but not least, he says, after identifying strengths, Drucker says to tie them into your values instead of against them, because you'll find a lot of people actually do this and make the mistake of tying it into something that goes against their values. So pursue what your strengths are and allow yourself to fulfill your values and your morals in life. All right, guys, I hope that covered it all for you. Now, we'll be making a lot more of these videos to help you with your training, to help you with your personal development goals and for this training series. But until next time, leave a comment below on what you like the most, and I look forward to seeing you next time in Claire's Clues. Bye, guys.